Hello, everybody. Today I'm going to do something that I haven't done in a very long while. I'm going to give you a little bit of a review for a board game, the Arkham Horror Living Card Game. This is the base set, the second edition, the reprint. It's not just a reprint, it's a different edition. And for those of you who have been following my channel, I haven't done a lot of stuff regarding board games in a very long time. But if you want to go back to, I want to say 2016, when the original version first came out, I had highly anticipated the game. I had pre-ordered it and I was really looking forward to playing it. And I did an unboxing, which was a disaster when I first tried to set up the first scenario. Everybody who was there in the very beginning will remember the quest for where's Lita Chandler, who is an NPC in the game. It's a card, and lots of people were driven to distraction by the fact that she was almost impossible to find in the box, let alone later to be acquired in the game. And I really, really hated the game, which was really strange to me because I like the Arkham franchise and I love LCGs. I had been playing the hell out of Lord of the Rings and I really loved it and I loved the concept, but it just didn't work. And so I remember selling that particular set that I'd bought within a week of doing the unboxing and trying to my first playthrough, and I sent it to somebody in Poland and they were very happy. I hope that they really enjoyed it. I hated it and I never looked back. And then last week on Sunday, for no apparent reason, and I can't really tell you why, I looked on the website of my friendly local game store, and they are really local. I mean, in Germany, lots of places are not really local, although they are local. They do have a shop where you can pick up stuff, but they also have a very good online presence. And I've been buying from them for almost 10 years at this stage. Their name is Fantasy Welt. And basically, if you ever want to order from Germany, they're brilliant. And I just went on their website and I don't really know why. And this game appeared. It's not new by any means. And I just decided, you know what? It's a new version. I'm just going to buy it. And I also bought the campaign expansion for Carcosa, because Carcosa King in Yellow is my one true love in the whole mythos cycle. I think it's the best of any of the great old ones of the outer gods. It's the most interesting concept in all of its forms in which the King in Yellow makes himself known. And so I was like, okay, in for a penny, in for a pound. So I bought the expansion as well. The problem is, of course, they are English, and it's sometimes a bit difficult these days to get Asmodee games in English in Germany, because apparently Asmodee have changed the way they supply German stores by saying, oh, we're just going to give you German stuff. And I didn't get the Investigators expansion because they have changed the way they are packaging these. So this is the base game, which you definitely need. So it's got the, and I'm going to talk about what's in the box later. But then they also have, instead of having the major expansions and then the small expansion decks that you're used to from the olden days, they now provide all of the expansion, let's say, adventure cards in one big box and all of the investigator cards in a separate big box. What this means is that if you want to deck build yourselves, only one person of your group needs to get the adventure expansions, and everyone who wants to can get only the investigator cards, which is really good. And it's also the same way that they have changed the release schedule for Lord of the Rings. They're also now releasing the games in two separate packages, which I find is actually really good, because most people end up having to buy, or in the old days, having to buy all of the small packages so that they would also get the investigator cards or the hero cards. And then you end up in your gaming group, if you're 3 people, then you have 3 times the adventure card expansion cards and the hero cards, which doesn't make any sense. It's okay if you say, yes, I'm also going to play a lot of solo, then of course I also want and need the adventure cards. But usually, if I'm not going to play solo, but if I'm going to play with a group, I want the hero or investigator cards. Now, they didn't have the investigator cards for Carcosa, neither in German nor in English. We wouldn't have any issues playing with mixed language, and I'm just going to have to switch classes. But that's beside the point. They're going to be re-released at some point if, what's his face in the United States stops his weird trade war, which of course is impacting the gaming industry because lots of stuff is printed in China, which makes sense because that's where it's most efficient, cost efficient. But with the tariffs in place, importing them into the United States is of course too expensive at this stage. So we're waiting for lots of stuff to come in, and I hope that maybe they will come to their senses and just say we're going to distribute in Europe at least, and in the rest of the world, and the United States, well, whatever, import it into Canada and then distribute it from there. Anyway, who would ever have thought that geopolitics would impact gaming in such a great deal? Anyway, what is in the box and why do I think this is good? Because we played 2 scenarios from the base set yesterday and we had an absolute blast, and we were already preparing the decks for the next scenario in this box. So in the olden days, Fantasy Flight Games was a terrible company that was trying to milk everybody and didn't give 2 cents about the consumers, the buyers, the people, the nerds. Because when you bought the old base deck, you never had enough cards to build more decks for more people. The essential cards were always missing. We all remember Unexpected Courage or Ancient Mathem from the Lord of the Rings LCG, coveted cards which you really need for your base game decks when you have no other cards yet. When you bought the old basic LCG Lord of the Rings, you couldn't construct enough decks for more than one person. And even then they didn't have enough copies of the good cards. So people started copying the cards, and then, and since everybody's usually sleeving their cards anyway, they would then proxy. And it was abysmal and it was stupid because they wanted to get everybody to buy the basic set. And if you wanted to play with 2 people, you really needed 2 basic sets. And that's, of course, very expensive. Now they've moved on from this to a much more sustainable way, and also one that means that when you buy this game, you get 5 heroes, 5 investigator cards, and you get 5 decks, fully functional decks. For each of these investigators, you get 1 deck which works for this particular investigator, and it works perfectly. They have been pre-constructed, and we played with 2 investigators, 1 each, Skids O'Toole and Agnes Baker. I played Agnes Baker. My partner in crime played Skids O'Toole. And basically now, and I hear that this is the same for Lord of the Rings, they have turned all of this into a basic campaign mode, which means that you get to play through these 3 scenarios. And depending on your outcome, which can vary, you have different starting positions for the next game. So, spoiler alert, we played the first one where you have to escape basically from your house because it's essentially falling down and being consumed by ghouls that are coming up through the floors. And you can get Lita Chandler if you are able to. And if you do, then the lead investigator gets to add her to their deck as an additional card that doesn't count towards the limit. So you suddenly have an additional ally, and she's quite powerful. There is also a big bad, the Ghoul Priest, I believe is his name, who you need to destroy. However, you can always, if things are completely dire and you don't want to risk your investigators, because if they die or go insane, they are out. Then you have to bring in a new investigator, and your old investigator is gone, which of course means in the campaign, if you've built his or her deck, all of your deck building is null and void, because you will have to bring back another different adventurer, which some people criticize, but which I actually quite like, because I think it's a good idea. If somebody dies, then that means they're dead, and that's it, and you have to bring in somebody else. Very Lovecraftian, Cthulhian. And essentially then what happens is, if, for example, you don't kill the ghoul priest, they will come up in the second game. Or also you get the choice of, do I burn down the house or do I keep my house? Depending on if you burn down the house or if you don't burn the house, if you burn the house or don't burn the house, there will be a different location. Namely, your house will be a location in the second scenario. We burnt the house because we were like, hey, we're out of here. This is like, whatever. And we just burnt everything to a cinder, to a crisp. And now, when we played the second scenario, we didn't have the possibility of having our house as a location, which makes perfect sense. So, and you also get experience points during gameplay, and you can use those to upgrade your cards, to buy cards, and that's what I really like. So basically, you start with 0 cost cards because it's a basic deck, but also in the box come, I want to say maybe possibly around, I don't know, I never counted them, maybe 80 or so upgrade cards from the various spheres that exist. And you also get deck building guidelines, because each investigator has certain things that they can add to their decks and certain things that they can't add to their decks, certain limits with regard to card levels per sphere. I'm going to use the word sphere because that's what you have in Lord of the Rings. I don't know what they call it here. And we were able to upgrade twice without even having to think about it. I mean, it wasn't kind of like, oh yeah, I would like this card, but you want this card as well, so who's going to get it? We managed to do it. It was fine. And we still have lots of cards that we could, in theory, add, for which we don't have the experience points. And you can actually bank them. So basically, on my second upgrade, after the second scenario, I only spent 4. And now I've got 1 left, which I can add to any experience that I gain if Agnes Baker survives the third one, and add to her after the to her new experience if she survives the third. What we also did was, we didn't finish the second one. We resigned because we realized we were running out of time. So the doom counter was ticking away. So we didn't quite finish, but we got at least some result, which I really like, because it teaches you sometimes you just have to withdraw to live and fight another day. So that was really well done in terms of also the atmosphere, making it interesting, making it believable, making this a challenge. We were playing on standard. We weren't playing on easy. And it was a challenge, especially if you only have basic cards and if it's your first time or second time out. And it would also be interesting. First of all, what we both noticed was we were like, oh, we want to continue playing, but we were out of time. So we prepared our decks for the next time. So we already kind of like thinking ahead, yeah, we're going to play again, and we do want to go through this. I also think it would be interesting to take some of the other adventure investigators that are still in the box that we only sleeved, that we didn't look at, that we didn't play, to see how they play, because Skids O'Toole and Agnes Baker play very differently. We didn't really get to cooperate that much, simply because we were usually not in the same location. So this idea of helping, committing a card to helping your fellow investigator, we may have done that only once, but we did kind of discuss and we did kind of strategize, and that also came off nicely. And the most important thing is, we had a blast. We never felt like, because I remember when I first played the first version of this game as a lone adventurer, I went with the idea of, was it Roland Banks that they suggest you take Anyway, there's a suggestion if you're playing on your own, you should take this investigator. And I did. And it was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. And I remember being totally frustrated. And I'm like, okay, if you're saying it's possible to play this with only one, so one-handed, so with one investigator only, and then you're even suggesting one, then make sure that it is kind of doable and enjoyable, to make sure that people do have kind of like this initial, oh yeah, I want more of this, because I was completely turned off. And I kept collecting Lord of the Rings, the LCG, but Arkham Horror, which should have been like an auto instant buy, an instant like, absolutely went out the window. And I'm like, I don't want to see this again. So what's next for us? Well, like I said, we've got the Carcosa campaign expansion. We don't have the investigators, but you don't really necessarily need them either. And I've also bought the Dunwich Legacy expansion in German, and also the Return to the Dunwich Legacy expansion, because the Return expands on the expansion, if that makes sense. So it gives you additional scenario cards, and it also gives you 83 additional investigator cards, which of course we can mix in with the investigator cards we already have. And of course, we're still waiting for the for one of the expansions, for the investigator expansions, to become available again, because at the moment they're neither available in English or in German. So we're waiting for the reprints. But I would like to say that if you, like me, got turned off the first version of this game, I would suggest you try again, because it has changed. All of the supporting materials are much better. It comes with 3 manuals. It comes with the basic rules, learning to play, which are really well written. There are some things where we were like, yeah, we would have wanted this to be a little more explicit, but you know, hey, I mean, you live and learn. I would love to give feedback, because there are some things where I'm like, there's some information missing, which you have to piece together. There is a reference, a rule reference, which is a really hefty pamphlet. And then there is the campaign guide. Of course, you can also play them standalone. And then there's also information on how to construct your chaos bag if you're playing standalone. But then there's also the campaign guide, which also has very nice in-between scenarios reading material, where you basically say, okay, so if this happened, if you had this outcome, then read this. If previously you did that, then, you know, do this. And it just means it hangs together nicely. It strings together the whole story, and it is very, very interesting, very well done. Which brings me to another thing, and that is simple usability. First of all, the artwork is stunning. It is beautiful, but that's also what we expect, because Fantasy Flight Games has always had beautiful art. Even if the gameplay of their games sometimes sucks, the art is always good. This is no exception. But it's a card game. So you have to put a lot of information on a very small space. And that's where readability becomes very important. First of all, you have to use icons intelligently, and they're doing that. But you also have to have basic things like a good font, a readable font, but also a background against which the font and the writing stands out. There wasn't a single card where I was sitting there going, I can't read this. And this is happening to me more and more frequently these days, because, like, I mean, I've now got 3 sets of glasses. This is my normal pair of glasses. This is my computing glasses, and then I've got reading glasses that I only look at, that I only use when I read. This one also has a very small reading window, this pair of glasses. So basically, when I go shopping and I wear this, I can actually read the labels. If I just had my normal glasses that I use to look into the distance, like my sunglasses, I would not be able to read any labels these days, which really means you can't go shopping. So readability is becoming more and more of a problem for me. And I'm not the only one, because a lot of gamers are now aging. And we have been playing for decades, and now we're seeing that, our eyes are failing, so we need this added support. And it's not just us. We also know that there are people with reading disabilities, or simply with disabilities, visual disabilities anyway, who've always found it really difficult to use some of the gaming materials. But these gaming materials are easy to read and also easy to understand. I feel that the language is simple, even if you're a non-native speaker. They have used good iconography, which also helps because the icons are really clearly distinguishable. So sometimes you have icons that look very similar, and if they're then small, it sometimes is difficult to make them out. Not so in this case. Really well done. And that's also a big thumbs up, because usability and user experience isn't just something for software companies. It's also something for hardware companies and for gaming companies, because if your game is super, but you struggle to play it because you can't read the stuff or you can't make it out, people will stop playing those games, because you just don't want to spend your time or waste your time really on trying to read and make out the information. You will just move on to something else. So this is a clear must buy if you are into Arkham Horror, if you like LCGs, and if you just want to give it a try, because this will give you all the things you need to play on your own, or to play with up to 3 other people, so up to 4 people. And you have a 5th investigator if you want to try something else, and you can build your own decks, and you can change them, and you can make them better, or change them. Changing them doesn't necessarily make them better, but play around with different options. And it's all in this box, and you will have a lot of fun with it. And then if you basically get infected with a bug, there are lots of expansions that you can get from there. So talk to you soon. Bye.